younger voters, millennials and Generation Z, if you combine them, they are the largest voting bloc in US history with 65 million eligible voters. However, their enthusiasm for President Biden in general and for the Democrats in particular seems to be a problem. Here to talk about all of this is Cristina Tzintzún Ramirez. She is the president and executive director of NextGen America. Cristina, first of all, Joe Biden, youth turnout was huge in 2020, in part because of Joe Biden's agenda and the desire to get rid of Donald Trump. What happened?
Well, Joe Biden was never really popular with young voters. The truth is that young voters are overwhelmingly progressive, but they are not for the Democratic Party or any one politician. They're about progressive policy. And so Biden said he was going to cancel student debt. Millions of young people went and voted for him to cancel student debt. And they also went and voted to defeat fascism and Donald Trump on the agenda. So, Democrats need to understand that demographics are not destiny, that young people will turn out, but it's about also pushing forward progressive policies. And what we saw happen across the country last night in primaries, especially in North Carolina and Pennsylvania and other states, is that progressive candidates are winning. And that's because of the issues they stand for that are really, really popular with a broad base of the electorate, especially young people.
And it seemed like Joe Biden stood for erasing some level of student debt. That was one of the things that he campaigned on in 2020. Now he says he's sort of thinking about it, but is ruling out anything like $50,000. How crucial is this issue to younger voters?
Not every single young person has student debt, but millions of people do, and millions of people have held off on doing basic things like buying a house, deciding whether they're going to have kids, or just making basic economic decisions about their future because of student debt. It's a mortgage on the mind for millions of people. And so canceling student debt is a crucial thing that the Biden administration needs to do for keeping its campaign promises, and also for millions of young people that need that economic relief. And it will ultimately help Democrats win if they cancel student debt.
And never mind the policy, in terms of politics, it seems like a no-brainer for the Biden administration to certainly do this well before the 2022 midterms. What do you sense, or what do you hear is holding them back?
Well, I think that there's internal debate. Some people want to tell the Biden administration they can't cancel student debt. We know it's within his power to do so. We're all pushing. We're part of a national coalition of groups that are pushing, and the millions of young people that we help mobilize are also pushing and demanding that the Biden administration cancel student debt. We also have to remember that Republicans, even just a few weeks ago when Biden said he was considering moving forward on canceling student debt, already said they wanted to push forward legislation legally blocking his ability to cancel student debt. So we also have to remember why this election is so important, that ultimately we do need to push the Biden administration, but Republicans are ascendant in this moment right now, whether we're talking about Roe v. Wade or on economic policies, and just even seeing the brutal mass murder that we saw in Buffalo with the great replacement theory, that we need to go out and vote, because it's about stopping this ultra right-wing extremist agenda and pushing forward on the progressive policies that young people want.
We often hear that progressive policies, when younger voters in particular are polled on them, it is very inspiring and energizing to them. The Biden administration, of course, has seemed to be sort of holding its fire in terms of progressive policies and not going as far as a lot of people had anticipated they would. What else, though, do you think there are other things that explain the sort of malaise that a lot of people feel right now about Joe Biden?
The truth is that, when you look around, I think we did defeat fascism, and that is no small feat that we defeated, at least in 2020. And we're going to have to do it again and again, because the ultra right wing is not going home. They're continuing to fight. And if Roe v. Wade teaches us anything, is that they will come decade after decade to usurp the power of the American people, especially a young, diverse electorate that looks very different than the Republican Party. But Democrats we pushed the party. Remember, just a few years ago, it was not front and center in the Democratic Party to talk about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. It was not front and center to talk about the power of unions. It was not front and center to defend the right to abortion in the way that it is now. But ultimately, Joe Biden has to do a lot more to deliver for young people, and that Democrats need to actually deliver on progressive policy. And it's really difficult for millions of young people that don't watch everything that's happening. And it's frustrating to see that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, to very moderates, almost Republicans, have blocked progress on these core issues that young people care about. But for me, I know that we have to defeat the Republican right-wing agenda that doesn't care about the working class, that doesn't care about the rights of women, that doesn't care about the rights of the LGBTQ community and people of color. But it's not enough just to elect Democrats. We have to push them to actually deliver on progressive policy.
And delivering on those policies can take time, even in sort of the best of circumstances. Here, you have one of the two major political parties in the United States, which seems, I don't want to say dysfunctional, but seems like it is so lacking in sort of any basic integrity or shame. And I wonder how much of that then, and the fact that Joe Biden still has to deal with Republicans, does that perhaps turn off younger voters who think that the entire system is therefore just corrupt?
I mean, the truth is, I've been an organizer for 20 years. I spent years organizing undocumented immigrant workers. I spent years organizing young people and working moms. And as an organizer, you're about where you can push and make the greatest leverage points. There is no pushing Republicans. They have no interest in an agenda that young people, young progressives care about. Democrats can be pushed, but we've got to push them. And ultimately, the party has moved in the right direction, but it took millions of young people and insurgent progressive candidates like Bernie Sanders running to get us to a place where the Democratic Party is saying there shouldn't just be a minimum wage, but there should be a living wage, that we should be talking about legalizing marijuana across the country, that we should be talking about racial justice as a core component of any Democratic agenda.
John Fetterman seems to fit some of that bill. He won the Democratic primary for Senate in Pennsylvania last night. And he's in favor of decriminalizing marijuana, strong support of LGBTQ rights. In fact, I think he officiated over marriage long before it was sort of fashionable for Democrats to do so. A clear progressive. Is that and he's certainly outside the box in terms of how he looks. He looks like he's a member of the Addams family as opposed to a member of any sort of political establishment. Is that the sort of thing that younger people are looking for, that sort of authenticity?
Yeah, I think people just want someone that's real, right? It feels like so many times in politics, you get cookie cutters of what people think is electable versus what actually people want to hear. And we have a real problem with American politics, which is many elected officials answer to donors instead of the American people. And what we have to remember is ultimately, especially as young people, that we represent the largest, most diverse, and most progressive voting bloc in the country. I always say as an organizer that voting isn't the most important thing we can do, but it is the most basic thing we must do. That it is one of the crucial tools we have to hold people accountable. And we go out and do that, and we still go out and protest, and we still go out and organize other people and in our communities. But ultimately, the right wing wants to see us stay home and not use that power. So let's flex that power and vote, and not just vote for a Democrat and hope they do well, but do what they did in Pennsylvania. Go out and vote for a Democrat that you believe is actually going to deliver real policy change for you.
A few of the younger voters that I've spoken with recently, they explain their sort of disengagement from politics, even sort of civic action, by saying, look, we are incinerating our planet. Our political leaders of both parties are doing nothing. We're doomed anyway, so why bother? What do you say to people like that?
Well, what gives me hope is actually the millions of young people that are organizing and mobilizing around issues like climate change. I think we have to remember that the arc of history is long and that it does bend towards justice. But we have to be the ones to bend it, that we have to organize, mobilize, and vote to deal with these big issues. And every time our country has had the courage or imagination to tackle big issues, it's taken the power of young people to reject the status quo and say, we're not just going to make changes and modifications on the margins. We're going to disrupt the entire system to make sure it works for ordinary people. And our country desperately needs that courage again in this moment.
The political headwinds certainly seem to be against Democrats. A lot of the polling suggests that Democrats are going to get walloped in the 2022 midterms, but there's also every indication that Donald Trump is going to run for president again. If he's the Republican nominee, does that by essentially de facto make younger voters more engaged, more enthusiastic about participating in 2024?
I mean, you had record-breaking turnout of young people in 2020, the highest youth voter turnout in American history, and they went to go defeat fascism and the ultra-right wing agenda. And that ultra-right wing agenda is on the ballot, not just in 2024 when Trump is on, it's on now. Whether it's Roe v. Wade, the Don't Say Gay campaigns, trying to not let us talk about racism with critical race theory in this country, and the attack on immigrants. What we saw happen in Buffalo, where 10 Black Americans lost their lives, is an exact and direct line from the right-wing insurgent extremist agenda we see happening, whether it's Tucker Carlson or a mass murder like we saw in Buffalo. This is the consequence of fascism in 2022 and in 2024.
And Cristina, I'm just curious, when your organization or others band together and lobby the White House on some of these issues, what's been the response from either President Biden or his top aides?
For me, what's clear as an organizer at NextGen, we worked to elect Joe Biden because we realized what was at stake against Trump. But it wasn't just about getting him elected. It's been about pushing him on student debt, pushing him on immigration policy. We've gotten the Biden administration to a place where they say they're going to move forward on student debt. We have to keep pushing. We've gotten them to say they're going to rescind Title 22, which is also a great replacement theory. And when immigration policy in this country is dictated by the likes of Tucker Carlson that tries to bully us into anti-immigration policy. So we've pushed the Biden administration and we need to keep pushing to ultimately win.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like the Biden administration is saying the right things, but I get the sense the younger voters in particular, they want action. They want to actually see some concrete results. Cristina Tzintzún Ramirez, she's the president and executive director of NextGen America. Cristina, thanks for being on the program and good luck to you.
Thanks so much.